I've been in love with Harper for 3 years, and she has no idea. Drop a comment if you've ever felt that instant spark with someone who could never love you back the same way. Every morning when she texts me good morning, every time she calls me her person, every moment she curls up next to me during our movie nights, it's both everything I want and a quiet torture I've learned to live with. Harper is the kind of woman who lights up every room she enters. She's confident in that effortless way some people are born with, the kind of person who can strike up a conversation with anyone and make them feel like the most interesting person in the world. Her laugh is infectious, her smile genuine, and when she focuses those bright green eyes on you, it feels like being seen for the first time. She's beautiful in an understated way, shoulder-length auburn hair that catches the light, freckles across her nose that she tries to cover with makeup, but I secretly love, and this way of moving through the world like she belongs everywhere she goes. We met in college during our sophomore year, paired together for a psychology project neither of us wanted to do. I was immediately struck by how she could make even the most mundane research feel like an adventure. She'd show up to our study sessions with coffee and pastries, turning our corner of the library into something that felt almost like home. By the end of that semester, we were inseparable. She'd drag me to parties where I'd stand awkwardly by the wall while she effortlessly socialized. Then later we'd escape to her dorm room where we'd talk until sunrise about everything and nothing. That's when I first realized I was falling for her. Not in some dramatic movie moment, but in the quiet spaces between her words, in the way she'd absently play with my hair while we watched Netflix, in how she'd text me first thing in the morning and last thing at night. I told myself it was just friendship, that the warmth spreading through my chest when she smiled at me was normal, that everyone felt this protective and devoted to their best friend. But Harper is straight. Completely, utterly straight. I've watched her cycle through boyfriend after boyfriend over the years. Jake the pre-med student who was too serious, Marcus the artist who was too flighty, David the business major who was too focused on his career. She'd come to me after each breakup, curling up on my couch with a pint of ice cream and analyzing every detail of what went wrong. I became her relationship counselor, her shoulder to cry on, her safe space to process her romantic disappointments. "You're the only person who really gets me," she'd say, her head on my shoulder as we dissected her latest failed relationship. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mia. You're my person, you know that. My person." The phrase should have made me happy, but instead it felt like a beautiful cage. I was her person, but not in the way I wanted to be. I was her emotional support, her confidant, her best friend, but I would never be her girlfriend, her partner, her choice. I was safe, reliable Mia who would always be there to pick up the pieces when her real relationships fell apart. Over the years, I've become an expert at compartmentalizing my feelings. I've learned to smile and nod when she gushes about a new guy, to offer dating advice that helps her connect with someone else, to be genuinely happy for her successes even when they don't include me. I've become skilled at reading the signs of her moods, knowing when she needs space and when she needs closeness, when she wants to talk, and when she just wants comfortable silence. But the constant emotional intimacy without any possibility of more has left me feeling hollow inside. I've tried dating other women, but it never works out. How can anyone compete with Harper? How can I give my heart to someone else when she already owns it completely? I've gone on dates where perfectly lovely women have tried to connect with me, and I've found myself comparing every laugh to Harper's, every smile to hers, every conversation to the effortless way we talk to each other. I've become increasingly isolated from the lesbian community, making excuses to avoid social events where I might meet someone. My friends have stopped trying to set me up, probably thinking I'm just not interested in dating. The truth is, I'm terrified that no one could ever measure up to Harper, and even more terrified that someone might, because then I'd have to choose between a real relationship and this beautiful, painful friendship that has become the center of my world. Harper doesn't know any of this, of course. To her, I'm just Mia, her loyal, dependable best friend who's always available when she needs me. She doesn't see the way I watch her when she's not looking, doesn't notice how I memorize every detail of her stories, doesn't realize that when she absent-mindedly touches my arm or leans against me, it sends electricity through my entire body. I've convinced myself that having her as a best friend is enough. That being her person, even in this limited way, is better than not having her in my life at all. But late at night, when I'm alone in my apartment and she's probably texting some new guy, I feel the weight of all these unspoken feelings pressing down on my chest like a physical ache. 3 years of loving someone who can never love me back the same way. 3 years of being everything to her except the one thing I want to be most. The coffee shop on 5th Street had become my sanctuary over the past few months, a place where I could escape the constant ache of being Harper's best friend while wanting so much more. I'd started coming here after particularly difficult conversations with her, the ones where she'd analyze her latest relationship disaster while I nodded supportively, my heart breaking a little more each time. That Tuesday afternoon, I was nursing my 3rd cup of coffee and pretending to read when someone slid into the chair across from me. I looked up to find a woman with short auburn hair and kind eyes, wearing a paint-splattered denim jacket that somehow looked effortlessly stylish. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice warm with a slight rasp, "but I've been watching you for the past hour and you haven't turned a single page of that book." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Oh, I'm Avery," she said, extending her hand. "And before you think I'm some creepy stalker, I'm actually procrastinating on a design project and noticed you looked like you might be doing the same thing." I shook her hand, surprised by how natural it felt. "Mia. And you're right, I've been staring at the same paragraph for 20 minutes. What's the book?" She tilted her head to read the cover. Virginia Woolf. Heavy stuff for a Tuesday afternoon. "I teach high school English," I explained. "Well, I'm trying to. This is for my lesson plans, but my brain keeps wandering. To anywhere interesting?" There was something playful in her tone, but not pushy. Just genuinely curious. I found myself smiling for the first time in days. "Not particularly. Just life stuff." Avery nodded knowingly. "The kind of life stuff that makes Virginia Woolf feel like light reading? Something like that." I closed the book, realizing I actually wanted to talk to this stranger. "What kind of design project are you avoiding?" "Logo redesign for a local brewery. They want something edgy but approachable, modern but timeless." She made air quotes, rolling her eyes. "Basically, they want me to perform magic. Sounds like my students when they ask for essay topics that are easy but impressive." "Exactly." Avery laughed, and the sound made something warm unfurl in my chest. "You get it. Most people just tell me to make it look good, like that's helpful feedback." We fell into easy conversation about work, books, and the peculiar challenges of creative professions. Avery had a way of listening that made me feel heard, not just the polite nodding I was used to, but genuine engagement with what I was saying. When I mentioned struggling with a particularly difficult student, she offered thoughtful suggestions instead of empty platitudes. "You know," she said after we'd been talking for nearly an hour, "I don't usually approach strangers in coffee shops. But there was something about you. You looked like you were carrying the weight of the world, and I had this weird urge to help lighten the load." My phone buzzed with a text from Harper. "Wine night at mine? Need to debrief about the Eric situation. You're the only one who gets it." I stared at the message, feeling that familiar tug of obligation mixed with longing. Harper's latest boyfriend had been particularly insufferable, and I knew she'd want to dissect every detail of their relationship while I offered comfort and advice, all while pretending I didn't wish I could be the one she was choosing instead. "Everything okay?" Avery asked, noticing my expression. "Just a friend needing emotional support," I said, putting my phone away. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" I hesitated. There was something about Avery's presence that made me want to be honest, but I'd spent 3 years perfecting the art of hiding my feelings about Harper. She's going through a breakup, and I'm usually the one she turns to for advice. "That's what good friends do," Avery said gently, "though you don't look thrilled about it." "I am a good friend," I said, perhaps too quickly. "I want to be there for her." Avery studied my face with those perceptive eyes. But sometimes being the person someone turns to for everything can be exhausting." The admission surprised me. I'd never said that out loud before. "Especially when you're dealing with your own stuff," she said softly. "It's hard to be someone's rock when you need support too." Something in her understanding tone made my chest tighten. When was the last time someone had asked about my emotional needs? Harper certainly never did, Our friendship revolved around her dramas, her relationships, her feelings. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who listened without judgment. I should probably go, I said, suddenly feeling vulnerable. She's expecting me. Of course. Avery didn't look disappointed, just understanding. But before you do, would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime? When you're not needed for emotional crisis management. I blinked at her. Dinner. A date, she clarified with a small smile. I'm asking you on a date, Mia. My heart did something complicated, a flutter of excitement mixed with panic. It had been so long since someone had shown genuine romantic interest in me, so long since I'd even considered the possibility of dating someone who wasn't Harper. I started, then stopped. What was I going to say? That I was hopelessly in love with my straight best friend? That I'd convinced myself no one else could ever measure up? That I'd been emotionally unavailable for 3 years? You don't have to answer right now, Avery said, pulling out her phone. But I'm going to give you my number, and if you decide you'd like to explore whatever this is, she gestured between us, you can call me. She typed her number into my phone, her fingers brushing mine as she handed it back. The contact was simple, Avery hot beverage. Think about it, she said, standing up. And Mia? You deserve to have someone who's excited to spend time with you, not just someone who needs you to solve their problems. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at her number. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a spark of possibility that had nothing to do with Harper. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely unexpected. When I finally made it to Harper's apartment, she was waiting with wine and tissues, ready to dissect every detail of her latest romantic failure. But as she launched into her familiar monologue about Eric's emotional unavailability, I found myself thinking about auburn hair and kind eyes and the way Avery had really listened when I spoke. You seem distracted, Harper said, pausing mid-sentence. Are you okay? Just tired, I lied, taking a sip of wine. Tell me what happened with Eric. But even as I settled into my role as Harper's emotional support system, I couldn't shake the memory of Avery's words. You deserve to have someone who's excited to spend time with you. For the first time in years, I wondered if she might be right. The next few weeks passed in a blur of coffee dates and late-night texts with Avery. For the first time in 3 years, I found myself genuinely excited about someone who wasn't Harper. Avery had this way of listening that made me feel heard, not just as a sounding board or emotional support system, but as someone worth knowing for my own sake. When she laughed at my terrible jokes about my students' essays, or when she showed me her latest design projects with genuine enthusiasm, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed, the possibility of being chosen. But Harper's behavior had become increasingly strange, like she could sense something shifting in our carefully maintained dynamic. She started calling me more frequently, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day with what seemed like manufactured emergencies. Her car was making a weird noise. Could I come listen? She couldn't decide between 2 dresses for a work event. Could I come over right now? Her mom had said something that upset her. Could we talk for hours about it like we used to? I found myself caught between 2 worlds, the familiar comfort of being Harper's person and the thrilling uncertainty of exploring something real with Avery. When Avery asked about my weekend plans, I'd have to navigate around Harper's constant need for my attention. When Harper called during my dates with Avery, I felt guilty for letting it go to voicemail, but also resentful that she seemed to have an uncanny ability to interrupt the few moments I was trying to claim for myself. The shift became impossible to ignore during one of our usual movie nights. Harper had insisted we watch some romantic comedy she'd seen advertised, claiming she needed mindless entertainment after a rough week at work. But instead of our usual arrangement, me on one end of the couch, Harper curled up on the other with her feet in my lap, she positioned herself unusually close to me, her shoulder pressed against mine. Halfway through the movie, she started playing with my hair, something she'd done occasionally over the years, but never with this kind of focused attention. Her fingers moved slowly through the strands, occasionally brushing against my neck in a way that made my breath catch. When I glanced at her, she was watching me instead of the screen, her eyes searching my face with an intensity that felt different from our usual friendship. You seem different lately, she said softly, her fingers still tangled in my hair. Distracted. Like your mind is somewhere else. I tried to focus on the movie, but her proximity was making it impossible to think clearly. I'm just tired. Work has been crazy with parent conferences coming up. It's not work, she said with certainty. I know your work stress face. This is something else. Her hand moved to rest on my shoulder, her thumb tracing small circles against my collarbone. Is it that woman you mentioned? Avery? The way she said Avery's name carried a subtle edge, like she was testing how it felt in her mouth and finding it distasteful. I shifted slightly, trying to create some space between us, but Harper's hand tightened on my shoulder. We've been spending time together, I said carefully. She's really great. Harper's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What does she do again? Something with computers. Graphic design. She's incredibly talented. She showed me some of her work for this nonprofit campaign about environmental conservation, and the way she thinks about visual storytelling is just. Sounds fascinating, Harper interrupted, her voice flat. She finally looked back at the TV, but her posture remained tense. How long have you been seeing her? We're not. I mean, we've gone out a few times. It's still new. New, Harper repeated, like she was trying to understand a foreign concept. And you like her? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with something I couldn't quite identify. Harper's eyes were back on me, and there was something almost desperate in her gaze, like she was searching for a specific answer. Yes, I said honestly. I do like her. Harper's hand dropped from my shoulder, and she pulled back slightly, creating the space I'd been trying to establish. But instead of relief, I felt a strange sense of loss. It's just. Harper started, then stopped, shaking her head. Never mind. What? Nothing. I'm happy for you. But her voice carried none of the warmth I'd expect from someone who was genuinely happy for their best friend's romantic prospects. The next morning, Harper showed up at my apartment with coffee and bagels, something she'd done occasionally over the years, but never with this kind of regularity. She'd started appearing at my door at least twice a week, always with some excuse. She was in the neighborhood, she'd bought too much food, she'd had a nightmare and couldn't sleep. I was thinking we could go to that farmer's market downtown, she said, settling onto my couch like she belonged there. Remember how we used to do that every Saturday sophomore year? We never do spontaneous things anymore. I glanced at my phone, where I had a text from Avery asking if I wanted to check out a new art exhibit that afternoon. I actually have plans with Avery today. Harper's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Oh, right. Of course. You could come with us, I offered, though something in my chest tightened at the thought. I'm sure Avery would love to meet you. No, Harper said quickly. I wouldn't want to intrude on your date. The word date sounded foreign in her mouth, like she was trying it out and finding it didn't fit quite right. She stood up abruptly, pacing to my window and staring out at the street below. Mia, she said without turning around. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think? She paused, her shoulders tense. Do you think anyone could ever really know you the way I do? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Harper turned to face me, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that I'd rarely seen before. I mean, I know that you hate the sound of people chewing ice, and that you cry during commercials with dogs, and that you reorganize your bookshelf when you're stressed. I know that you wanted to be a writer before you became a teacher, and that you still write poetry sometimes when you think no one's paying attention. I know that you take your coffee with exactly 2 sugars, never 1, never 3, and that you read the last page of books first when you're nervous about the ending. She moved closer, her eyes never leaving mine. I know that you hum when you're concentrating, and that you bite your lip when you're thinking hard about something. I know that you're afraid of thunderstorms, but you pretend you're not, and that you keep a flashlight in every room just in case. I know that you love your students more than you let on, and that you stay up late worrying about the ones who seem lost. My heart was pounding as she continued, her voice growing softer with each revelation. I know that you have this little laugh you do when you're genuinely surprised by something funny, and it's different from your polite laugh or your nervous laugh. I know that you touch your necklace when you're anxious, and that you always order the same thing at restaurants because you're afraid of being disappointed by something new. She was standing directly in front of me now, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "I know all of this about you," she whispered. "And I know that no one else does. Not even close. So how could someone you've known for a few weeks possibly understand you the way I do?" The question wasn't really a question, it was a claim, a declaration of ownership that made my chest tight with a mixture of recognition and something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Harper," I said carefully, "what are you saying?" She blinked, as if suddenly realizing how close she'd gotten, how intense her words had become. She stepped back, running a hand through her hair. "I'm saying that I'm your best friend," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm saying that I don't want you to forget that. I don't want someone else to become more important to you than I am." The admission hung between us, raw and honest in a way that felt both familiar and entirely new. Harper's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and I could see her struggling with emotions she didn't seem to understand. "You're my best friend," I said softly. "That's not going to change." But even as I said it, I could feel the lie in the words. Something was changing, had been changing since the moment Avery smiled at me across that coffee shop. And Harper could feel it too, the slow shift in our carefully maintained balance, the way my attention was finally turning toward someone who might actually be able to love me back. Harper nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She gathered her things quickly, suddenly eager to leave, and I watched her go with a heavy heart, knowing that we'd crossed some invisible line that we couldn't uncross. The next few weeks passed in a blur of confusion and mounting tension. Harper's behavior had shifted so dramatically that Mia found herself walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of her best friend would show up at her door. The woman who had once been confident and self-assured now seemed fragile, desperate in ways that made Mia's chest tight with worry and something else she couldn't quite name. It was a Thursday evening when everything came to a head. Mia had just returned from dinner with Avery, her cheeks still flushed from laughter and the easy warmth that had become their rhythm. They'd talked about taking a weekend trip together, maybe to the coast, and for the first time in years, Mia had felt genuinely excited about the future. She was still smiling when she found Harper sitting on her doorstep, knees drawn up to her chest, looking smaller than Mia had ever seen her. "Harper? What are you doing here?" Mia fumbled with her keys, heart already racing. "I texted you earlier. You didn't respond." Harper's eyes were red-rimmed, her usual composure completely shattered. "I couldn't. I didn't know what to say." She stood slowly, following Mia inside with the careful movements of someone trying to hold themselves together. "How was your date?" The question hung between them, loaded with an intensity that made Mia's stomach clench. She'd been sharing details about her dates with Harper for weeks now, trying to maintain their usual openness, but something in Harper's voice tonight felt different. "Dangerous." "It was good," Mia said carefully, hanging up her jacket. "We went to that new Italian place on. Are you sleeping with her?" The words hit Mia like a physical blow. Harper had never asked such a direct, invasive question before. They'd talked about Mia's relationships in general terms, but Harper had always respected boundaries, had never pushed for intimate details. "Harper, that's not. Are you?" Harper's voice cracked, and she took a step closer. "Because I need to know. I need to know if she's." Mia stared at her best friend, seeing something wild and desperate in her eyes. "Why does it matter? You've never asked me about anyone else like this." "Because this is different." Harper's composure finally shattered completely. "This is different and you know it. You're different with her. You light up when you talk about her, you disappear for hours without texting me back, you're leaving me behind." The accusation hung in the air between them. Mia felt her own emotions rising, 3 years of buried feelings threatening to spill over. "I'm not leaving you behind. I'm trying to have a life, Harper. I'm trying to date someone who might actually want to be with me. But I need you," Harper whispered, and the raw vulnerability in her voice made Mia's knees weak. "I need you, Mia. More than she does. More than anyone does." "You need me as a friend," Mia said, her voice barely steady. "You need me to listen to you talk about your boyfriends, to be there when they break your heart, too." "No." Harper shook her head violently. "No, that's not what this is about." They stood facing each other in Mia's small living room, the air thick with years of unspoken words. Harper's hands were shaking, and Mia could see her fighting some internal battle that she didn't understand. "Then what is it about?" Mia asked, her voice gentler now. "Because I'm confused, Harper. You're acting like you're jealous, but that doesn't make sense. You're straight. You date men. You've never shown any interest in." "I can't stop thinking about you," Harper interrupted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I can't stop thinking about you with her, about her touching you, about her knowing things about you that I don't know. And I know that's not fair, I know I have no right to feel this way, but I can't help it." Mia's heart stopped. "Harper. I broke up with Eric," Harper continued, tears streaming down her face now. "I broke up with him because I couldn't focus on anything except you. I couldn't kiss him without thinking about you. I couldn't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just friendship." The words Mia had dreamed of hearing for 3 years hung between them, but instead of joy, she felt a crushing weight of fear and confusion. "You don't know what you're saying. You're upset, I'm in love with you." Harper's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through Mia like a blade. "I'm in love with you, and I have been for, God, I don't even know how long. Maybe always. Maybe since the first day we met and you made that joke about Professor Morrison's terrible toupee. Maybe since the night you held me while I cried over David. Maybe since last month when I watched you laugh at something Avery said and I wanted to die." Mia felt the world tilt around her. 3 years of careful walls crumbling in an instant. "Harper, you can't. You don't understand what you're asking of me." "I understand that I can't breathe when you're with her," Harper said, taking another step closer. "I understand that I've never felt this way about anyone, not Eric, not David, not any of the men I've dated. I understand that I'm terrified of what that means about me, about who I am, but I'm more terrified of losing you." "You're not going to lose me," Mia said desperately. "I'm your best friend, I'm always going to be." "But you're not just my best friend," Harper interrupted, reaching out to touch Mia's arm. "You're not just my best friend, and we both know it. The way you look at me sometimes, the way you take care of me, the way you know exactly what I need before I even know I need it, that's not friendship, Mia. That's love." Mia felt tears burning her eyes. "Harper, please don't do this. Not now. Not like this." "When?" Harper's voice broke. "When you're married to her. When you've built a life with someone else and I'm just, what?" The friend who was too scared to tell you how she felt. "You're straight," Mia said weakly, grasping for the safety of old certainties. "You've always been straight. You've never looked at women, never." "I've never looked at anyone the way I look at you," Harper said, and now she was close enough that Mia could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "I thought that was normal. I thought everyone felt this way about their best friend. I thought the reason my relationships never worked was because I was too picky, too focused on friendship, too, but it wasn't that. It was because none of them were you." Mia's carefully constructed world was falling apart. The friend she'd loved in silence for 3 years was standing in her living room, confessing feelings that mirrored her own, and instead of happiness, all she felt was a crushing sense of impossibility. "I'm seeing Avery," she said, the words feeling like stones in her mouth. "I'm seeing her and I care about her and I can't just." "Do you love her?" Harper asked, and the question hung between them like a challenge. Mia opened her mouth to say yes, to lie, to protect them both from this moment. But the word wouldn't come. She cared about Avery, enjoyed her company, felt attracted to her, but love? The kind of love that had been eating her alive for 3 years? "I could," she said finally. "I could love her. She's good to me, she's available, she's not me," Harper finished, and her voice was so quiet, so broken, that Mia felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. They stood there in the growing darkness of Mia's apartment, 3 years of careful friendship dissolving into something raw and desperate and terrifying. Harper's hand was still on Mia's arm, and Mia could feel the warmth of her skin through the thin fabric of her shirt. "I don't know how to do this," Harper whispered. "I don't know how to be. I don't know what this means about me, about us. I just know that I can't watch you fall in love with someone else. I can't pretend anymore that losing you to her wouldn't destroy me." Mia looked into her best friend's eyes and saw her own pain reflected back at her. 3 years of loving someone who couldn't love her back, and now… Harper, she said softly, reaching up to touch her friend's face. What are you asking of me? I'm asking you to give me a chance, Harper said, leaning into Mia's touch. I'm asking you to let me figure out what this means. I'm asking you to choose me. The words hung between them, a question that would change everything regardless of how Mia answered. She thought of Avery, of the easy warmth and uncomplicated affection they'd been building. She thought of the future she'd been imagining, safe and simple and free from the heartache that had defined her relationship with Harper. But she also thought of 3 years of loving someone in silence, of the way Harper's smile could light up her entire day, of the way her heart had just stopped when Harper said she was in love with her. I need time, Mia said finally, her voice barely audible. I need time to think, to figure out what this means. I can't just throw away what I have with Avery without knowing if this is real or if you're just scared of losing me as a friend. Harper's face crumpled, but she nodded. Okay, I understand. But Mia, please don't take too long. I don't think I can watch you choose someone else. The days that followed Harper's confession blurred together in a haze of avoided calls and sleepless nights. Mia found herself staring at her phone, Harper's name lighting up the screen with increasing frequency, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How do you have a normal conversation with someone who just turned your entire world upside down? How do you pretend that 3 years of buried feelings hadn't suddenly erupted into the open like a dam finally giving way? Avery noticed the change immediately. During their dinner date at the Italian place they'd been meaning to try, Mia pushed her pasta around her plate, lost in thought. You've been somewhere else all evening, Avery said gently, reaching across the table to touch Mia's hand. What's going on? The warmth in Avery's voice made Mia's chest tighten with guilt. Here was this incredible woman who was falling for her, who brought her flowers and remembered how she liked her coffee, who made her laugh in ways she'd forgotten she could. And all Mia could think about was Harper's tear-stained face and the way her voice had cracked when she'd said she was in love with her. I'm sorry, Mia said, finally meeting Avery's concerned gaze. I've just got a lot on my mind with work. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she wasn't ready to explain the storm that Harper had unleashed in her carefully ordered life. That night, Mia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzing with another text from Harper. Asterisk, please talk to me. I can't lose you over this. I'm so scared, Mia. Asterisk, the vulnerability in those words made her heart ache, but she still couldn't bring herself to respond. What was she supposed to say? That she'd been in love with Harper for 3 years? That she'd dated other women hoping to forget her? That every relationship she'd ever had been measured against the impossible standard of her straight best friend? By Thursday, Harper's texts had become more desperate. Asterisk, I know you're avoiding me. I understand if you need space, but please don't shut me out completely. I can't bear the thought of losing you. Asterisk then, later that evening, asterisk, I broke up with Eric. I couldn't keep pretending when all I could think about was you. Asterisk. Mia's hands shook as she read that last message. Harper had ended things with Eric? The same Eric she'd been gushing about just 2 weeks ago, calling him different from the others, and maybe the one? The implications sent Mia's mind spinning. If Harper was willing to end a relationship over her, then maybe her feelings were more than just confusion or some kind of emotional crisis. Friday evening arrived with the kind of autumn chill that made Mia want to curl up with a book and forget the world existed. She'd just settled onto her couch with a cup of tea when urgent knocking echoed through her apartment. Her heart lurched because she knew that knock, Harper's impatient, rhythmic pattern that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat over the years. Mia opened the door to find Harper standing in the hallway, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. She was wearing the oversized sweater that Mia had always loved on her, the one that made her look younger and more vulnerable than her usual confident self. I know you don't want to see me, Harper said, her voice hoarse. But I couldn't stay away anymore. I've been going crazy, Mia. I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't think about anything except what I said to you and how you looked at me like I'd just destroyed everything good between us. Mia stepped aside, unable to deny Harper entry despite every rational part of her mind screaming warnings. Harper walked into the living room like she'd done hundreds of times before, but everything felt different now. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and 3 years of suppressed longing. "You didn't destroy anything," Mia said quietly, closing the door and leaning against it. You changed everything." Harper turned to face her, and Mia could see the raw pain in her eyes. "I ended things with Eric," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't keep pretending to feel something I didn't when all I could think about was you. Do you know how terrifying that is? To realize that everything you thought you knew about yourself might be wrong." Mia's heart clenched at the anguish in Harper's voice. She wanted to cross the room and pull her into her arms, to comfort her the way she'd done so many times before. But she couldn't. Not when her own feelings were so tangled and raw. "Harper," she began, but Harper cut her off. "No, let me finish," Harper said, tears starting to fall. "I've been thinking about this for days, going over every moment we've shared, every time I felt something I couldn't name. Remember when you dated Sarah last year? I told you I was happy for you, but I cried myself to sleep that night and I didn't understand why. Or when you got promoted and I was so proud but also terrified that you might move away for a better job. I've been in love with you for so long, Mia, and I was too scared to admit it even to myself." The words hit Mia like a physical blow. Harper had been in love with her too? All this time, while Mia had been suffering in silence, Harper had been experiencing her own quiet torment. "I know you're with Avery," Harper continued, her voice breaking. "And I know I have no right to come here and mess up your life like this. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't keep dating men and trying to convince myself that what I felt for them was love when it was nothing compared to what I feel for you." Mia watched Harper fall apart in front of her, this strong, confident woman who had always seemed so sure of herself and her place in the world. The sight of her vulnerability was almost too much to bear. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this," Mia said, her own voice shaking. "You're telling me everything I've wanted to hear for 3 years, but at the worst possible time. I'm with someone else, Harper. Someone who actually knows she wants to be with me." "I know," Harper whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know I'm being selfish and unfair. But I had to tell you. I had to know if there was any chance that you might feel the same way." The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unspoken truth. Mia felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that whatever she said next would change everything forever. "Of course I feel the same way," she said finally, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I've been in love with you since the day we met. Do you think I would have stayed up all night listening to you talk about your boyfriends if I didn't? Do you think I would have held you while you cried over men who didn't deserve you if my heart wasn't breaking every single time?" Harper's eyes widened, hope flickering in their depths. "Mia. But that doesn't make this right," Mia continued, her voice growing stronger. "I can't just throw away what I have with Avery because you've finally figured out what I've known all along. She doesn't deserve that." Harper nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I needed you to know. I needed to stop living this lie." They stood there in the dim light of Mia's living room, 3 years of hidden love finally exposed between them. The weight of it was almost unbearable, but also strangely liberating. No more pretending, no more carefully guarded words and stolen glances. "What happens now?" Harper asked, her voice small and uncertain. Mia looked at this woman who had been her best friend, her secret love, her constant companion through every joy and heartbreak. She thought about Avery, waiting for her to figure out why she'd been so distant. She thought about the choice she was being forced to make between the love she'd always wanted and the love that was healthy and available. "I don't know," Mia admitted. "I honestly don't know." Harper stepped closer, close enough that Mia could smell her familiar perfume, could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "I love you," she said simply. "I know I'm late and I know I'm asking too much, but I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. And if there's even a chance that we could be something more than friends, I'm willing to fight for it." The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a plea all at once. Mia felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling, 3 years of restraint finally giving way to the overwhelming force of her feelings. "Harper," she whispered, reaching up to cup her face, thumb brushing away a tear. "You have no idea what you're asking of me." "I know," Harper said, leaning into her touch. "But I'm asking anyway." And then, before Mia could think or reason or remember all the reasons why this was complicated and messy and potentially devastating, Harper was kissing her. Soft at first, tentative, as if she was afraid Mia might pull away. But when Mia melted into her, when 3 years of longing finally found its voice, the kiss deepened with desperate hunger. It was everything Mia had imagined and nothing like she'd expected. Harper's lips were softer than she'd dreamed, her hands trembling as they tangled in Mia's hair. The kiss tasted of tears and hope and the bitter sweetness of love finally acknowledged. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Mia rested her forehead against Harper's. "This changes everything," she whispered. "I know," Harper said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm ready for everything to change." The morning after felt like waking up in a different world. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my lips still tingling from Harper's kiss, my heart torn between elation and devastation. Everything I had dreamed of for 3 years had finally happened, but it felt like holding water in my hands, beautiful and impossible to keep. Harper had left around midnight, both of us too overwhelmed to process what had occurred. Before she walked out, she touched my face gently and whispered, "I need time to figure this out, Mia." But I meant everything I said. The vulnerability in her voice had nearly broken me all over again. Now, in the harsh light of day, I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and called Avery. "Hey, beautiful," she answered, her voice warm and sleepy. "You're up early for a Saturday. Avery, can we meet for coffee? I need to talk to you about something important." The shift in her tone was immediate. "Of course. Everything okay? I'll explain in person." 30 minutes at our usual place. We met at the small cafe where we'd had our first date just 2 months ago. Avery arrived looking concerned, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the vintage band t-shirt I'd complimented on our third date. The sight of her, so genuine, so uncomplicated, made my chest ache with guilt. "What's going on?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. I took a shaky breath. "I need to be honest with you about something. About someone." Avery's expression grew serious, but she nodded for me to continue. "There's someone I've had feelings for. For a long time. Before I met you." The words felt like glass in my throat. I thought those feelings were buried, that I could move on, but last night, something happened, Avery finished quietly. "Yes." I couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Avery. You deserve someone who can give you their whole heart, and I realized I can't do that right now. I have to figure out what this means." Avery was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but sad. "Is it Harper?" I looked up in surprise. "How did you?" "The way you talk about her. The way you light up when she calls, even when you're annoyed with her. I've been wondering if there was something there." She managed a small smile. "I was hoping I was wrong. Avery, I never meant for this to happen. What we have is real, and you're incredible But you're in love with her," she said simply. The truth hung between us like a weight. "Yes." Avery nodded slowly. "I appreciate you being honest with me. It hurts, but I'd rather know than wonder why you seem to be holding back." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I know you are." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. "For what it's worth, I hope it works out for you. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel the way you described feeling about her." After Avery left, I sat alone in the cafe for another hour, processing the mixture of relief and regret coursing through me. I'd done the right thing, but it didn't make it easier. Harper didn't call for 3 days. On the 4th day, she texted, "I'm seeing someone. A therapist. Need to figure some things out. Can we talk soon?" I spent the next 2 weeks in a strange limbo. I threw myself into work, took long walks, and tried to give Harper the space she needed while wrestling with my own fears. What if she decided her feelings were just confusion? What if she couldn't handle the implications of being with a woman? What if I'd lost both my best friend and my chance at love? My sister called during the 2nd week. "You sound terrible," she said bluntly. "What's going on? Remember Harper?" I asked. Your straight best friend you've been pining over for years? What about her? She's not as straight as we thought. There was a pause. Oh. Oh, Mia. What happened? I told her everything, the confession, the kiss, the separation. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Are you scared? She asked finally. Terrified. Of what, specifically? I considered this. That she'll change her mind. That she'll realize being with me means coming out to her family, dealing with their questions, changing how she sees herself. That she'll decide it's too complicated and go back to dating men. And if she does, then I'll have lost her completely. Mia, my sister said gently, you've been losing her slowly for 3 years. At least this way, you'll know for sure. On a Thursday evening, Harper finally called. Can I come over? I think I'm ready to talk. She arrived looking different, calmer somehow, more centered. We sat on my couch, the same place where everything had changed 2 weeks ago. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began. And talking. With my therapist, with myself. About who I am and what I want. My heart hammered against my ribs. And I kept waiting to feel confused or scared about kissing you, about what I said that night. But I don't. The only thing I'm scared of is not being with you. She turned to face me fully. I've been researching sexuality, reading about women who don't realize they're gay or bi until later. And I keep coming back to the same thing. I've never felt about any man the way I feel about you. Harper, let me finish. She took my hands. I know this is complicated. I know it means coming out to my family, dealing with their questions, figuring out parts of myself I never examined before. But I also know that I can't keep pretending these feelings don't exist. I can't keep dating men and wondering why it never feels right. What about Eric? Your other boyfriends? I think I was trying to find with them what I already had with you. The emotional intimacy, the connection, the feeling of being truly known. But it was never there because I was looking in the wrong place. She smiled softly. I was already in love. I just didn't understand what that meant. I felt tears building. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to just being friends. I don't want to go back, she said firmly. I want to go forward. With you. If you'll have me. The kiss this time was different, not desperate or confused, but certain. When we broke apart, Harper rested her forehead against mine. I ended things with Avery, I told her. I know. I was hoping you would, but I didn't want to ask. I need you to know this won't be easy. Dating women, being out, dealing with people's reactions. I know, she interrupted. But I'd rather face all of that with you than keep living a lie without you. We talked until dawn, planning how to take things slowly, how to navigate her coming out process, how to build something real and lasting. As the sun rose, Harper curled up against me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. I love you, she murmured sleepily. I love you too, I whispered back, finally able to say the words I'd carried for 3 years. For the first time in longer than I could remember, the future felt full of possibility instead of longing. The morning light filtered through my apartment windows as I sat curled on my couch, nursing what had to be my 4th cup of coffee. 2 weeks had passed since Harper kissed me in this very room, 2 weeks since she'd asked for time to figure out her feelings. I'd respected her space, even though every day felt like holding my breath underwater. The soft knock on my door made my heart skip. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole. Harper stood there in jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, looking more settled than I'd seen her in months. Hi, she said when I opened the door, her voice steady but gentle. Hi. I stepped aside to let her in, trying to read her expression. She moved with purpose, not the frantic energy that had characterized our last few interactions, but something calmer, more resolved. We settled on opposite ends of the couch, the same spot where everything had changed between us. Harper tucked one leg under herself, facing me fully, and I could see she'd been thinking, processing, working through whatever storm had been raging inside her. I've been seeing Dr. Martinez, she began, her hands folded in her lap. A therapist. I needed to understand what was happening to me, what I was feeling. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. I told her about you. About us. About how I've never felt this way about anyone, not even the men I thought I loved. Harper's eyes met mine, clear and certain. She helped me understand that sexuality isn't always black and white, that people can discover things about themselves at any age. My chest tightened with hope I was afraid to feel. I kept thinking about that night you pulled away from me, Harper continued. You were protecting both of us, weren't you? Making sure I was really sure before we crossed that line completely. I couldn't bear the thought of you regretting it, I admitted quietly. Or of losing you entirely if you decided it was a mistake. Harper scooted closer, her knee brushing mine. Mia, I need you to know something. What I feel for you isn't confusion or experimentation or some crisis response to my breakup with Eric. It's love. Real, deep, terrifying love that I've been running from for years because I didn't understand what it meant. The words hit me like a wave, washing away weeks of anxiety and doubt. Harper, I know this changes everything, she said, reaching for my hands. I know I'll have to come out to my family, to my coworkers, to everyone who thinks they know who I am. I know it won't be easy. Her thumbs traced over my knuckles, and I felt the familiar electricity of her touch, but now without the guilt and impossibility that had always shadowed it. But I also know that I can't pretend anymore. I can't date men and wonder why it never feels right. I can't watch you with someone else and tell myself it's just friendship jealousy. I can't keep living half a life when the person I want to build a full life with is sitting right here. Tears blurred my vision. Are you sure? Really sure? Because I can't go back to being just friends after this. I can't pretend these feelings don't exist anymore. I'm sure. Harper's voice was firm, unwavering. I've never been more sure of anything. I love you, Mia. I'm in love with you. And I want to see where this goes, even if it's scary. I squeezed her hands, feeling like I could finally breathe again after holding my breath for 3 years. I love you too. I've loved you for so long I forgot what it felt like not to. Harper smiled, that radiant expression I'd fallen in love with countless times, but now it was meant for me in a way it had never been before. Dr. Martinez said something that stuck with me. She said that sometimes the most important relationships in our lives are the ones that teach us who we really are. And who are you? I asked softly. I'm a woman who loves another woman, Harper said simply. I'm someone who's ready to stop hiding from the truth and start building something real with the person who knows me better than anyone else in the world. She leaned forward, cupping my face gently. Can we try? Really try? I know we'll have to take it slow, figure out how to be together instead of just friends. But I want to learn. I want to learn how to love you the way you deserve. Instead of answering with words, I closed the distance between us, kissing her softly, properly, without the desperation and confusion of that first kiss. This one was full of promise and possibility, of a future we could finally build together. When we broke apart, Harper rested her forehead against mine. I want to take you on a real date. I want to hold your hand in public. I want to introduce you to my family as my girlfriend when we're ready. I'd like that, I whispered, hardly believing this was real. I'm scared, Harper admitted. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of anything else. You're not going to lose me, I promised. We'll figure it out together. As the morning sun filled my living room, Harper and I sat intertwined on my couch, talking about everything and nothing, planning our first official date, discussing how to navigate this new territory. For the first time in years, the future felt bright and full of possibility. The woman I'd loved in secret was finally ready to love me back, openly and honestly. And that was worth every moment of waiting, every tear shed, every night spent wondering if this day would ever come. It had, and we were finally free to begin.